Hey babes, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Brandy. I am the host of the Be Real Babe Show, a spin-off of the Be Real Babe podcast. And today, you guys, we are going through an internet insanity, the final one of the quote-unquote season, wrapping up the best that I can, the Diddy case as of live today, as I'm recording this, as I'm hopefully going to publish this tonight. I did mention it was going to be coming in a little bit later, so either launching tonight or tomorrow, but this is live to the best that I know it. As most of you guys know, probably the verdict already, I did promise a wrap up, and I'm going to be tacking this on to one of the final episodes of the podcast as well. So if you're interested in being updated from the last about week and a half of the Diddy case, the verdict, and did he get bailed, then stick around and we'll jump right in. Okay, babes, as mentioned, this has been a long couple weeks recording this Diddy trial. Definitely going to break it off into a different series if I do this again on YouTube. And it's not because I don't find this interesting and I don't like following these cases. It's just that I feel like I missed so much other internet insanity in the meantime. And I truly didn't think this would take this long of a case, to be honest with you. But it looks like we're wrapped up. We have a verdict, and I guess you guys already probably know that as you're watching this video, but I do want to walk you through the whole entire timeline, still from when we left off last to today, and if he was what happened with his verdict today. So starting off, last time we talked, it was the 20th. They were just wrapping up, the prosecution was just wrapping up their witnesses. At the current time, I believe they had 34 witnesses in total the prosecution brought on, and they were just wrapping it up the Friday and then bringing it on to the Monday, and then they were going to be looking in closing their going into their closing arguments. Sorry, so that's kind of where I left you guys off here. So let's because I know most of you that are watching us are going to know actually what the verdict is, so I don't need to say it right now, and stick around and we'll go through it. But what kind of led us up to that, and what are we to expect next, and some funny comments. And as mentioned, guys, this is the last episode for a couple months. I am going to be posting all the episodes of the podcast that was just last in season 9 that was on Apple and Spotify only. I am bringing it over here for the next 2 months, just so there is content for you guys to watch with my amazing guests on the podcast. I'm taking a break for 2 months just to reevaluate how I want to do the show and the layout and all those things, and reevaluate the platforms that I'm using, because at the end of the podcast and this YouTube season, even up to right today, I've had nothing but problems with Riverside the last little bit. Not that I don't love them, not that I don't enjoy using these platforms, but it is just a little frustrating when I don't have a backup. So I'm going to be looking at that and just how can I make this flow a little easier for me so I can keep posting all this content without overdoing it and overrunning myself. So shut the fuck up about yourself. Just kidding, but that's what's coming up. 2-month break. Have listened to the podcast, and I'll be back in September. Now, what happened June 23rd, 20? So as I mentioned, they had wrapped up the final prosecution witness, Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent Joseph Cercilio, who testified about government-compelled evidence charts. Both sides also showed the jury several minutes of sexually explicit videos from the case. So at that time, the 23rd, which was a Monday last week, the defense said that they expect to finish cross-examining tomorrow morning. The defense indicated it intends to start and end its case, which which will include submitting exhibits into evidence tomorrow. Closing arguments are expected to run Thursday, Friday. So this was as Monday, so they're just finishing up their last witnesses on this case there, which they did. Going into the 24th, they rested... So both sides rested their case on the 24th. Sean Diddy Combs' defense team rested after presenting a roughly 30-minute case and calling 0 witnesses in the music mogul's federal criminal trial. Earlier today, the prosecution rested its case, which took just over 6 weeks. So on the 24th, the Tuesday, they concluded their 6-week, just over 6 weeks, I guess, if you include the 2 days, I think, of their witnesses. And then what was going to happen Thursday, Friday was going to be the closing arguments. But as of Tuesday, the prosecutors had said that they did not intend to present a rebuttal case. The judge told the jury to return Thursday for closing arguments. The lawyers will meet tomorrow for charge conference, where both sides will discuss what instructions need to be given to the jury. So Monday, Tuesday, they wrapped up their witnesses, got everything done there that they needed to. Wednesday, the jury got to kind of stay away, take the day off, while the lawyers and the judge go through what needs to be presented to the jury and how they're going to deliberate. And then Thursday, Friday were the closing arguments for both sides. And then I believe they came back on the Monday to get instructions on how to deliberate, and then they started their deliberations on Monday. Here in Canada, on Canada Day, I was listening and trying to keep up the best I could while celebrating Canada Day at the same time, knowing that at the end of the day that they had come to unanimous votes for three out of the 5 charges, but they were trapped on the 2, so they had asked for a little bit more, and then it kind of went on from there. So yeah, on the 27th, the jury deliberations were set for next week. As mentioned, the jury will receive instructions from the judge in Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial case Monday and begin deliberating. The panel heard a closing argument from the defense and rebuttal from the prosecution on Friday. So that I believe the prosecution is the last person to speak. Mark Agnifilo argued that the prosecution exaggerated the case against Combs and had only shown evidence of his swinger lifestyle, personal drug problem, not a criminal enterprise. But as mentioned, prosecution gets the last word. In her rebuttal, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey accused the defense of making excuses for the music mogul, blaming his victims. She urged the jury to find Combs guilty and show that he is not above the law. So again, they got to say their last words. The prosecution got to say their last words. Then they go home for the weekend. They obviously do whatever they need to do, probably like really decompress all of these things, knowing that as of Monday, they're going to be going into what they've been spending the last 6 weeks getting ready to do, find him guilty or not guilty on certain charges beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So that happened. So we go to Monday. No verdict after day 1 of jury deliberations in Diddy's sex trafficking trial. The jury of 8 men, 4 women, weighing whether the hip-hop mogul is guilty of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. So this is an article from the 30th. The jury deliberations got underway on Monday in the Diddy Combs federal sex trafficking trial and hit a snag almost as soon as they started. But by the end of the day, jurors indicated they were making progress weighing complex charges that could put hip-hop mogul away for life. The first day of deliberations saw a flurry of notes from the jury and Combs and his supporters bowing their heads in prayer in the courtroom, but no verdict. The jury of 8 men and 4 women are sifting through 7 weeks of sometimes graphic and emotional testimony about rap, fashion, and reality TV and personnel, propensity for violence, and his sexual predilections, including drug-fueled sex marathons dubbed freak-offs or hotel nights. About an hour in, the four-person alerted the court that a juror was having trouble following the judge's instructions. That prompted the judge to send a note back reminding jurors that they must abide to what he said. "We are concerned the juror cannot follow your honor's instructions," the four-person wrote in a note just after 12:30 local time. The judge sent his note to the jury after 2 p.m. local time reminding jurors to deliberate and follow instructions of the law. After the judge originally proposed asking the jury foreperson the nature of concerns about the fellow juror, defense lawyer Mark Agnifilo suggested caution and that less be said rather than more. Combs' lawyer proposed that the judge remind the jury that they've only just begun deliberating and to resume doing so. If there are further problems, defense lawyer Mark Agnifilo suggested the jury can have the foreperson send another note. "We can always ratchet it up. We can't ratchet it down," Agnifilo said. The jury sent another note about 3 hours later asking for clarifications on part of instruction addressing drug distribution, an allegation including the racketeering conspiracy charges against Combs. So back and forth, right? So they came back. They were basically like, we can't come to an agreement on the 30th, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They got some clarity on things. They were, remembering if you don't come to something that it could be a mistrial, we'd have to redo it again. It could be like, was that called a hung jury? I'm not sure. But like, please keep in mind that we want to keep doing, we want to keep pushing, get in there, get dirty with it, It's kind of like, I don't know if you have kids or if you've worked in a dental office or service office, you know how the kids like misbehave when the parents are there more sometimes. I feel like it's that situation. We're just like, okay, let's leave them alone for a little bit. Let's let them deliberate instead of just running back to mom and dad. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying you jurors, but I'm just saying, like maybe that's where the idea is like, let them settle a little bit. I know everyone's anxious. It's been really long. I know a lot of people just want to be done with this. Maybe they're so set that they don't think that they're going to change, but just keep going. Because I think over time, your brain starts to open up maybe pathways a little bit more, and that's the whole push for it. Okay, so on the 1st, they go back, they continue deliberating, which again, I said I was celebrating Canada Day, so trying to keep up. And end of the day, they were unable to reach a verdict again. So again, the judge reminding them of what they need to do and to keep pushing forward because, again, a mistrial could be called. The jury sent a note to the judge saying that they have reached a verdict on the counts of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, but they're unable to reach a verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count. The note to the judge said the jurors, we have jurors with unpersuadable opinions on both sides. So they were dismissed after that, told to come back the next day to continue deliberations. They said that if needed be, that they would open the courts on Thursday the 3rd to continue if we need to continue on, but they really wanted to push them to get to a verdict, to work together towards all of them. And then that leads us to today, July 2nd. So this is obviously a couple hours ahead of me. I'm gonna try and post this tonight. It might be tomorrow. Let's see what I can get to tonight. I'm having nothing but problems. But let's hear what 50 Cent had to say, and we'll go through the technical verdict, the ending verdict, and what's to be expected. 50 Cent shares swift reaction to Diddy's verdict. Beat the Rico, he got the John Gotti. So within minutes of the news that verdict had been announced in the Diddy's federal sex trafficking racketeering trial on Wednesday, 50 Cent offered a reaction. As 50 put it, went sharing what appears to be another AI-made image to Instagram. Diddy beat the feds and is thus a bad man. After a trio of clapping emojis, 50 added on to his initial reaction to the verdict like so. Beat the Rico, he the gay John Gotti. 50 in his reference to the late mob boss of New York City's Gambino crime family. Gotti got the nickname the Teflon Don after he got a wave of acquittals in the 1980s. Throughout Diddy's case, not to mention the wave of allegations that preceded it, 50 has been a prolific source of commentary on Diddy. He also has a documentary about the bad boy records mogul on the way. Jurors in the federal case ultimately found Diddy not guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking. The 55-year-old, however, was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. That carries charges with a maximum possible sentence of 10 years behind bars. So, not guilty on racketeering and sex trafficking for Cassie or sex trafficking, sorry, because there's 3 charges, right? There's racketeering, and then I believe there's sex trafficking for Cassie and sex trafficking for Jane. So those 3 charges got dropped, but he got charged on the 2 counts, one for Jane, one for Cassie of transportation and the escorts for the transportation to engage in prostitution. So from my understanding, I thought earlier that each come with 10. I guess technically each charge would come with 10 years, but I don't think that they'd be going back to back. But possibly that is something, you never know. I mean, the judge can fucking do whatever he wants, right? But it doesn't sound like we'll go over there what the predictions are for his sentencing. But yeah, so he did not get charged with RICO, which a couple episodes ago, I think I meant, not that I have any fucking clue what I'm talking about, but I do believe I did mention that. I think from my understanding, from hearing that that's the hardest part, and it sounds like that's what they're going back. My assumption is there was a couple people or maybe more people, I would say obviously a couple people that were like, yeah, he absolutely racketeering 100%, sex trafficking 100%. Some people are shocked, some people aren't. But at least he did get charged. Now, I guess my question is that a lot of civil lawsuits have come up through all of this, and I just get curious, if he was to be charged with RICO and they wiped out all of his money, would that money be held? I think I've asked this before for their cases, because this was obviously the federal case, but ever since then, a fuck ton more of cases have come up in lawsuits. So I mean, he's going to be going to jail, obviously, for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long yet, but a certain amount of time. And at the same time, when he gets out, is he going to be pelted with even more lawsuits and all of those things? So even though he didn't get charged on RICO, I do think that this put a huge spotlight on him, and not a positive one, just for his future. Now, he's rich and loaded, so I'm sure it doesn't matter. And there are people that still love him and think he's completely innocent. But yeah, that's, I think there's a part of us that are shocked and disgusted, but at the same time, not shocked and disgusted as much as that sucks. But after the news broke, the verdict broke, Doug Wigder, a lawyer for Cassie, issued a statement praising his client for having set this entire criminal process in motion with her civil complaint in 2023. She paved the way for the jury in the Diddy case for transportation to engage in prostitution. For now, Diddy, who was arrested in September of last year, remains in custody, though his legal team is pushing for that to change. A final decision on that matter is expected later today on Wednesday. So do we have the answer to that? Of course we do. Of course we do. But before we figure that out, what could he potentially be facing in prison? After the 12-person jury in the music mogul's federal trial acquitted him of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, he no longer faces life up to life in prison. However, since he was convicted of the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution relating to his ex-girlfriends Cassie Ventura and a woman who testified under the name Jane, Combs could still face significant jail time. The Bad Boy Records founder was convicted of 2 counts violating the Mann Act, which could carry as much as 10 years in prison. Oh, per count. See, I'm not wrong. Prosecutor Maureen Comey initially said her team would request the maximum sentence of 20 years to be served in consecutive 10-year sentences. However, prosecutors formally requested 51 to 63, about 4 to 5 years of prison time, according to NBC News. His team is seeking a prison term of 21 to 27 months per NBC as well. The music mogul's sentence will ultimately include the 9 months that he's already served, as well as the time he serves awaiting sentencing. So that's a vast difference of saying that you initially wanted 20 years back to back to now going, okay, well, how about 4 to 5 years? Like, how did you chop that in a quarter? I'm just curious. Like, again, how about the full 10 years? If you get charged, how about the full 10 years for doing that? That's just curious. Like, curious. I know a lot of the defense pushed that these girls were willing participants, and I understand that to the degree, and that's what that must have looked like, especially on the outside with text messages. But I do think he needs to be held responsible for putting them in those situations and just not being a decent person. And I know he can't go to jail for that, but he was a criminal. He is violent. He is a drug addict. I'm sorry, that's what it was said in court. And that's what you were charged with, right? Is trafficking or transporting for prostitution. That's not great. But it was the problem is like, just because he wasn't charged in court doesn't mean he's not guilty of things. It's just that they didn't feel that the evidence was there for beyond a reasonable doubt. There was some doubt. Doesn't mean he wasn't getting away with something. And equally, to be fair, means that maybe he was just a completely domestic violent, drug abused, sex crazed man, and maybe that's fine. But at least now a lot more women will have informed consent, at least. And I'm not saying if they get themselves into this position that they're not victims still, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, if he's just a monster, let's just stop poking the monster. Let's just leave the monster alone. Is that a good idea? I think that's a good idea. Let's leave the monster alone. So is he going to get bail? Because they're saying, hey, he is not a threat to society. He is fine. Everything is fine. He should be able to wait for his sentencing at home. He's been in jail for 9 months. He is not a danger to society. But the judge declined that today, granting bail to Diddy, meaning the hip hop mogul won't be free while he awaits sentencing in his sex crime case. The bond decision came after a jury convicted Combs of a federal prostitution-related offenses, but acquitted him of sex trafficking and racketeering charges. He's been behind bars since his arrest in September. This His lawyers argued that the acquittal on those accounts changed the legal landscape enough that he should be freed on a $1 million bond. Prosecutor says he remains a flight risk. The judge said the applicable law didn't allow for his release at this point. Among other reasons, the judge noted Combs' violent history. At trial, the defense even conceded the defense's violence in his personal relationship, saying it happened to Cassie and Jane. As the judge spoke, Combs remained stoic with his hands in his lap. Earlier Wednesday, he dropped to his knees and prayed to the courtroom after he was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have put him away behind bars for life. The rapper was convicted of lesser prostitution-related charges and faces prison time, seeking to be freed from jail awaiting sentences. The mixed result capped a sordid legal odyssey that shattered Combs' affable Puff Daddy image and derailed his career as Grammy-winning artist and music executive, fashion entrepreneur, brand ambassador, and reality TV star. He was convicted of flying people around this country, including his girlfriends and male sex workers, to engage in sexual encounters, a felony violation of the Federal Mann Act. The charge is punishable by up to 10 years in prison, and Combs' lawyer said that under federal sentencing guides, he'd likely face about 2 years in prison. Prosecutors citing Combs' violence and other factors said the guidelines would call for at least 4 to 5 years in jail. So I guess that's definitely probably, I feel like, what they would say a win for the defense, right? because out of 5, they've got 3 knocked down, and the ones that are going to, with the RICO and with putting him away for life and taking all of his money, obviously, and they wanted to be acquitted and just for him to go free and not have to worry about this at all. But sorry, he's still not a criminal. He still did things. So I understand them upholding the law there. But I guess that's what the jury says. Now, I know a lot of people were saying, well, if the jury did vote, vote that he vote. Yeah, I guess if they did vote that he was guilty of all charges, would they feel in danger? But I mean, who knows? I've never been in a criminal case like this. I couldn't imagine how stressful it is. So I do not fault anybody for how they're acting in any sort of way. But there we have it, folks. Now, sentencing will come out. How long will it get? I don't know when that's going to happen. All this is coming up very live as I'm recording it. Like I said, want to try and get this out for tonight the best I can. And recording it a different way that might not work. So apologies if my audio is shit. But hey, we're taking a break. It's the last one I had to get it done. I appreciate you guys so much for following this. Again, if I ever do something like this, I promise I'll make it a side series because I just missed it. There was so much drama. There was crazy mom talk. There was crazy YouTube drama. There was a bunch of shit that went down, a bunch of random internet insanity that I just didn't get to report on because I was so deep in the Diddy case, which is good because this is something I've been talking about for a while. That's why this is also going to be posted on the podcast as well, except for in a complete timeline instead of the last 5 weeks. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and listening to this series. If you have, or just listening to me entirely on YouTube, I appreciate you guys so much. If you want to go back, I do have about 3 months worth of other content of internet insanities. There is going to be the podcast posted here Monday and Fridays from now all the way until September. And in September, I will be returning with my weekly internet insanities. It might change days, but it'll be the same thing. A couple crazy stories on the internet. Hopefully it won't take my whole life and another crazy, disgusting case like this, but it felt really good to just be up to date and following it as it goes because I did hear a lot of shit outside and online that is not true. So it felt really good to follow this live, to be able to fact check myself and know that some of the stuff that I was finding or hearing was not true and to be able to clear that up. But guys, thank you so much for listening for this season. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, listen to the podcast airing Monday and Friday, and make sure you watch for September launching when I come back in the show and bring you more internet insanity when we go into the fall and winter season and I get depression and need extra projects to keep me happy through falls and winters in Canada. Just kidding. Thanks again, guys. And until next time, bye. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, bye.